Thanks for being here today. Your due now was summarizing inflation, which we talked about yesterday. That inflation is the changing in prices across the board of most products due to the uh, loss of value to money. All right, as money gets more and more worthless, prices go up. Today we're going to be talking about unemployment. To understand unemployment, we need to know a few vocab terms to understand exactly what this is measuring. We'll start with this idea of the labor force. The labor force is the number of people in a country that can work. So we're trying to figure out this idea of who's working and who's not and how big of a problem it is. We don't want to count like 10-year-olds, right? And we also don't want to count 80-year-olds. Right? So we got to find the right group of people to measure. So we call this the labor force. This is the amount of people in a country that are of the right age and are capable of working. So it does not count kids, retired, disabled, or if you've been out of work for a year or more. So if you haven't had an official job for a year, you're no longer considered part of the labor force. You're considered someone who's permanently out, meaning you're no longer even trying. Unemployment is the percentage of people who are on the labor force but don't have a job. So if you count all of these people out, we're left with a few 100 million people here in the United States. What percentage of them do not have a job currently? That's what unemployment is showing. Now, if you've been out of work for like 10 months, you're still considered unemployed. But once you get to that 12-month, you're not an unemployed person anymore. You're out of the labor force. You're permanently gone. You're not part of it. Now, you can join, you can come right back, get a job, but we're not counting that towards statistic because unemployment is a measure of people who want a job that can't get one. And if you've been out of work for a year, it's considered that you no longer want a job. So you're no longer counted. Here's a way of looking at it. This circle represents our entire country's population. The blue, dark and light blue, represent the labor force, the amount of people who can work and are willing to work. The pink are the people who are not in the labor force. But of the people in the labor force, how many of them cannot find a job? And that's what we consider unemployed. It's another way of looking at it. The labor force participation is employed plus unemployed divided by population. Here's some graphs to kind of represent the U.S.'s percentage to give you an idea of where we're at. Most people are employed. A large chunk of people are not in the labor force. Either they're young, old, or been out of work for a long time. And then the red represents the percent who are unemployed. Here's our unemployment rate over time since the 80s. You can see there have been times when it spiked up very high, obviously COVID, the biggest spike. But it seems to be in the, around the 5%. Occasionally go down a little bit. This is a number you want low. If it's going up high, that's bad news. That means people cannot find work. That means companies are not doing well. They're not hiring, which means people are not making money, which means they're not buying things, which means companies aren't making money. This is all bad news. Usually you want it around 3 to 5% would be a healthy number. It's currently at 3.8. But the not in the labor force is the more concerning issue, is that is a big number, 45%. We're getting close to the point where like half the people in this country do not work. Not that they're unemployed, because they're not even looking for jobs anymore. That's kind of the concerning number because that means 50% of the people are supporting the other 50%. All right, so a few questions on the Pear Deck. First, what does it mean to be in the labor force? You can pause the video. Being in the labor force means you are of age to be working, you are capable of working, and you are willing to work. Puts you in the labor force. Next, summarize what does the employment rate measure? You can pause the video. Unemployment is the rate, the percentage of people who are in the labor force who want a job but cannot find one, cannot get one. All right, so if these are our current numbers, 3.8% unemployed, 45% not in the labor force, what can you tell me about our economy? Does this indicate our economy is strong growing? Is it weak? Is it shrinking? Like what sort of uh, does this tell you about the economy? You can pause the video. So to me, this would indicate, the 3.8 is good news. Almost everybody who wants a job can find one. This is, at the lower end of what we want. The 45% is what I said was concerning. That's the more concerning number, that our economy is really reliant on half the people doing all the work and trying to support the other half. And that's a little bit of a dangerous number right there. Next, do you think 0% unemployment is possible? Now, for it to be 0%, that means that everybody who wants a job has one. Absolutely everyone. So it's very unlikely. I guess it's technically possible, but in our world, it's just not going to happen. People are constantly moving jobs for one reason or another. They move across the country. They don't like their job, their boss. They quit without having one ready. It's just realistically, it's not going to happen. But would we ever want it? Do you want 0% unemployment? Probably not. Right? That's great that everyone who wants a job has one, but that also means that companies who want to hire can't hire anybody new. There's no one out there to hire. And that makes it really hard to expand, to grow as an economy. So you want a little bit of unemployment, right? So companies can still grow and we can adapt and change. And realistically, it'll never be zero, but you obviously would want that kind of low. We got different types of unemployment. There's frictional unemployment. These are people who are in between jobs, like friction is between two objects. So if you left a job, you quit, fired, whatever it was, you'll get another job in a few weeks, a month or so. You're just in between. Then we have seasonal unemployment. These are people who work during different times of the year. So like a landscaper might be unemployed right now. Right? There's no need to cut grass. Whereas in the summer, I don't know, a ski instructor might be unemployed. Now, a lot of these people will get different jobs in the winter, summer, whatever it is, but sometimes they're unemployed during that off season. We have structural unemployment. These are people who lost their job because technology changed. Right? So things like cab drivers. Right? Technology is changing. We're changing the way we're doing things. Maybe like a cashier, someone who might be losing their job because it doesn't exist anymore. We're going to have kiosks and stuff. Cyclical unemployment is the one we're most concerned with. These are people who lost their jobs because the economy's bad. They have to lay people off. Companies can't hire as much because they're not making as much money. So on this slide, tell me, if a factory worker is laid off because there's a new robot, what kind of unemployment is that? And that would be structural. What about a gardener who's struggling during the winter? What kind of unemployment is that? That would be seasonal, because it's during a certain season they're not working. What about a waitress who lost their job because people don't go out to eat as much as they used to? That's going to be the cyclical. Right? People don't have enough money. They're not going out to eat. The company's losing money. This is all bad news. Waitress gets laid off. Which one do you think is most important to watch as an indicator? If we're trying to tell if the economy is doing good or bad, which one of these is most important? I would say cyclical is the most important. These are all unemployment. None of them are good. But the frictional, they'll get another job. Seasonal, give them a few months, they'll be fine. Structural, well, that one's a little concerning because that means those people need to come up with a new career. They got to come up with some new options. Cyclical is the really scary one because that says the economy's doing bad and people are getting laid off. Which of these is the least of a problem to you? Next, what do you think the government should do about unemployment and not in the labor force people currently? Now, I want you to evaluate unemployment rate as an indicator. Do you think it's a good or bad statistic? And why?